Hi, my name is Gabriel Marquez, and I'll be working on an art demonstration for you all today. I had an exhibition at the Edmonds Community College last quarter of 2017, and I was invited here to do an art demonstration, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Let's start.
So what are you thinking about drawing, subject matter?
I didn't actually have an idea today. I just kind of wanted to let it be very fluid, because that's usually how I work. I generally just like to do freehand drawing and just see where it goes. Usually I'll just start making marks until the image is suggested to me through the markings that I create. And it's pretty simple, but I usually have to go over all the markings that I made, because I don't want all of it to show. So
you're starting with some circular patterns. Do you typically work with circles in your mark making, or any specific, or it just depends on your mood and the day?
it kind of just depends on my mood and the movement. Sometimes it's like my body creates the drawing and not me, my mind, I guess. It's just a very intuitive process. I'm trying to create like some kind of figure of the body, but I'm trying to make it fit the image area. So right now it's very raw, but as soon as the image kind of comes at me, that's when I'll start defining everything. Or sometimes I'll just create some points of reference of the human form and just kind of make it happen that way.
So when do you decide whether it's going to be a human figure or a creature or an animal?
That usually comes by mistake. Sometimes I'll try and create a figure that's very feminine, and it'll turn into some kind of cat or a dog even, or just something completely off the wall. But for this drawing, I kind of had a creature in mind.
That looks great.
I like work that creates a lot of eye movement. So the lines that I use in my work, if you wanted to reference an illustration that I already have, you'll see that the lines are very dark, and there's a lot of lights and darks, but it's very monochromatic. It's not like full color detail. They're fun though. They're kind of like cartoons to me. They're not anything else really. Or they're not like people that I know, or they're not referencing people per se. But in the end, when they're all together, they kind of make some kind of narrative.
So a lot of my drawing students, when they get frustrated with their work, they want to start over. Do you struggle with that? Do you generally work through that?
Well, the thing about that is my work is made from the mistakes that I'm making on purpose. Most artists think that they need to use a reference and they need it to look just like that. I mean, for some artists, that's what art is. It's what they planned from the beginning, and if it's not perfect, then I can see why they'd be upset. But my teachers always taught me to embrace the mistakes and just let them, define the work. Because not everybody wants to see, some people just enjoy the artist touch of the work.
Exactly.
And if they can't see that, then to them it's not as special. But I mean, everybody has a different taste, so I can't speak for everyone. But I
Well-
would just tell your students to let the mistakes happen and push through, and that's how they learn what process works for them.
A lot of my art professors talked about happy accidents and just allowing the mistakes to kind of direct the work in an unexpected way that ends up being really key to the success of the piece. So I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I like working very rough and fluid, but at the same time, like when the image is there, that's when I'll really define it and tighten it up. So I like it when artists just kind of don't care when they start something and let the mistakes be what they are, and then it's the end result that's the most rewarding, for every artist, I would think. Don't really know what's happening here, but
So a lot of your work in the gallery was ink. Do you begin with, or perhaps I'm recalling that incorrectly, but when you add, what stage do you add the ink or decide that you're going to add color? Or
sometimes I'll just do like a few markings like this, like say, oh, okay, that's the eye. And then after that, or let me give more detail or whatever. Just for example, like let's just say I have this only. And then sometimes that's all I need. And then I'll just go over it with ink, and all the white space just kind of diminishes and it becomes what it is. But since I don't have an idea like that, I just kind of wanted to show the process of like, what do you do when you're bored and you want to draw something, but like you're not confident. It's like, well, why don't you just make the markings and forget about why you're creating it, just do it, I think it's easier to create art when you just don't think about it. A lot of artists, they have an idea and they're creative like that, but some artists work different.
what about those that haven't done any drawing before, but they'd like to?
I would just encourage them to just make a mark and and just look at it, and just let it come at you. I mean, if you can do that. If you can't, then take an art course, and have that. You got to learn the basics before you can actually. I mean, you don't have to learn the basics, but if you learn the basics, then you could break out of that later on. Or you could just learn the basics and be constrained to those if you're comfortable creating art that way. I mean, I've been drawing for, I think so, since I was like at least 7. I kind of felt like I wanted to be an artist at that time. My uncle, Louis, he would draw in sketchbooks or just like notepads or whatever, but he would draw nudes, and they were pen and they were very like bold. And you know, when you're young, you're like, what is that? And it just seemed like, you know, something interesting, kind of like capture a moment. I mean, I'm pretty sure they weren't from model or whatever, but you know, they were just interesting to me, and I kind of started drawing after that. I would keep his sketches.
So drawing's part of your daily practice?
Yeah, I mean, I've been drawing for that long, but then when I went to school, I went for art, but I mean, I studied graphic design because, you know, I wanted to have an income job, and then, because I knew I couldn't just survive on art. I mean, maybe I could, but when you're young, you don't know how confident you should be. So I would advise, you know, students to have a backup plan. You know, be an artist, but, you know, find a trade within that art realm, and just hit it hard, you know. I was fortunate enough to learn graphic design and get a good job. So I don't fully depend on art as my source of income. I work as a technical designer, and painting and drawing is kind of like my side hobby. I would love to do it full time, but it's just not like a reliable source of income. And plus, I have a family, so that's even harder.
Do you find that it would be different, or do you imagine it would be different if you were drawing commissioned work versus what you just naturally feel like drawing? Or
I think taking commission work is very challenging, but it kind of broadens your skills. So I'm not against taking commission work, but it is difficult because you're playing within the constraints of your client, and sometimes your client doesn't have the same vision you have, so it makes it hard. And you know, people that do commission work only, it's rewarding, but it's kind of not letting you create at your full potential. But yeah, I graduated. I actually went to community college, and it took me 4 years to do a 2-year degree. And but I started after that. I started working as a production artist for corrugated manufacturing. It was a box plant, and I was mainly working in Photoshop and Illustrator. And you know, it was a decent job, so it kind of led me to where I am now in the technical design field. And I work with a lot of engineers and with CAD drawings, flat drawings that are actually like 3D in the end products. But yeah, it's because I studied graphic design first, and then after I got my 2-year degree, I went on to get my Bachelor of Fine Art in Studio Art. It's a studio art degree because I double majored in painting and graphic design, so it wasn't like a Bachelor of Graphic Design or whatever. It was kind of a combination, but I liked the title. It was studio art, and that's kind of how I feel. You know, like I belong in a studio. whether it be in design or art, you know.
So a dog is emerging here. Has this particular dog appeared in other?
It's a reoccurring theme in my work for some reason. I went on a trip to Mexico, and I had seen these dogs. They were, sculptures in ceramic, I think, or they might have been created from molds. But they were like skeletons, and they had this motif, kind of similar to how I draw. And when I came back, I was like, oh, I want to draw one of those Mexican dogs. And so I've created a few successful ones, but for some reason, they're just really neat. The way they were created in Mexico sculpturally, they look very, I don't know, like poetic, spiritual, I guess, I don't know. I had an idea, and this was not it.
So when you started drawing, do you normally finish it the same day? Do you come back to it?
Yeah, like I could leave a drawing like this for a few days. I mean, I wouldn't, but I can. And usually I'll photograph my work so that I could look at it later, and then that's part of my process too, is I'll leave it at a certain point. If I feel like I'm working too hard, I'll take a break, a good break. Depends on the medium, but I mean, if it's just pencil, it's not anything that is permanent. So once I have like this big mess, if I want to define it, I'll just start erasing what's in between the line. And then just kind of let it, it's kind of like highlighting the areas that you would want the light to look like it was exposing itself. So far, so good. When you start like defining the work, that's when it starts becoming difficult, because you start having to make the real decisions of like what you want to leave, what do you want people to see, or how do you want the eye to move throughout the composition, where does it end?
How do you want the eye to move throughout this composition?
Just kind of from the eyes downward and back up again somehow. But you would need another subject for it to kind of move it around.
Is the face normally the focal point of your creatures or figures?
It's kind of like the window into it, and then it's kind of hollow. It's a hollow body, so I kind of let the viewers interpret my work because it's fun to see what they think about it. But ultimately, I just do it because I like the imagery. But I think my viewers or the people that like my work, they define it better than I do.
Do you find when you sit down and just begin drawing that the end result reveals something about you in relation to what's happening in your life at that time or on that day?
Yeah, definitely. It reflects the way I feel sometimes. Or if I want to tell a story or something, it won't be like a direct narrative. I kind of leave it up to the viewer to figure it out if there's anything there, you know. But sometimes I don't do it intentionally. It's just what it is. I try not to make them about me.
Why is that?
So, not all artists like attention. Usually, or lately, I've just been drawing with pencil, and then I'll go over with pen or like black marker. I find that it transfers really well versus charcoal over pencil. I don't recommend that.
Why would that be?
For some reason, the lead doesn't let the charcoal penetrate the paper, and I always struggle with that. But I started using markers because my dad bought me a pack. And they're pretty awesome. There's like markers that they're like pen. They have different pen tips, from really thin to really fine point to really like a marker style point. And I think it's ink. And they transfer really well over pencil. So like a drawing like this, I'd probably go over it in ink. because it transfers really well. I usually use those tortillion things.
The blending stumps.
Yeah, I don't need it, but but the oil on the finger, it kind of smears it a little better.
Mm-hmm. I like how your work tends to be more loose on the generally like the lower area, and then becomes more defined.
More
The
tighter.
form. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I find those are very handy too, because when you work in charcoal, like the tips break a lot. So a lot of people always ask me like, how do you get the charcoal to look so fine and so much detail? Or I mean, I'm usually sharpening pencil all the way down to the end by the time I'm done.
Wow.
Yeah, and I find that when you use a regular sharpen tool, they just keep breaking even more. So the machine kind of does it good. Does a better job.
Do you have a clear vision at this point for where you're going
Yeah.
with this? Yeah.
I don't know what I'm gonna do to finish it, but it's fun. It's just taking me for a ride too. I'm debating whether to add another like subject or just keep it as what is going on.
So I would imagine with your kind of approach to drawing as just sitting down and mark making and letting the work evolve on its own, that you don't experience a lot of artist block, or do you?
I do until I sit down and actually just do it. Sometimes, you know, you have to feel motivated to like give yourself the time and sit down and just work it out. I mean, some drawings happen really fast, and some can take a much longer time. I had a series of 3 drawings that I think I included 2 of them in the exhibition last quarter. I had drawn them and I didn't paint on them until a year later. So I actually held on to the drawings as they were for a year before I actually painted onto them. So some images are like really detailed to where they even intimidate me to like finish, because I know it's a lot of work. I think working in color is probably the hardest thing for me. I never actually challenged myself until lately. But before, like 2 years ago, I was mainly working in monochromatic style only.
What's
But
challenging about adding color?
just the whole layering process, like I was never really taught how to mix colors. I mean, in basic art, yeah, but nobody remembers stuff. Or at least I didn't. Because they're so basic, you know, like you don't find them challenging enough that you don't really take them seriously, and you really should. Because your color palette kind of defines your work in a way. You know, because color can be translated as mood or just, I'm not sure what else. I mean, it defines the mood of the work, so.
While you're drawing, do you envision color in certain areas, or that's really sort of the next stage when you start considering that?
Yeah, if I think the image is successful, then I would start thinking about color, but I think I struggle more just figuring out the image that I want. And then if it passes, then I'll give it some more attention. I usually do painting on wood panels versus painting on canvas or paper, because the line work that I do, it translates better on a flat, hard, smooth surface. I mean, I guess you could do that on paper too, but then you'd have to frame it. And that's always extra money. Usually when I don't know what I'm gonna do next, I just start defining the areas. Just kind of makes it more appealing. I have to know how things are gonna flow from the top down somehow. I think he became a she.
What makes you think that?
Well, I didn't have enough space to make it standing up, so I figured I'd have to put it like a dress, like she's kind of kneeling.
Mm. think there was another piece of yours in the gallery that had one of those petal skirts, similar.
Really?
I think so. I think it was the woman's face, or maybe she was a flower, but it sort of resembled a skirt. Something that's.
Was it like a head with a bunny on it, or?
I think
like
it
a bunny
was
head?
a smaller piece on the side wall,
The blue?
the first or second. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one. Yeah, no, it was like a flower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's neat to see how all of your mark making translates to.
Yeah, I usually, whenever I finish a piece, if I like it, I'll keep it around just so I could see the aesthetics of what made that piece good, and then I'll kind of translate that into all of. I keep that in my library, I guess, of styles.
So you create your own reference images.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
When you first started drawing, did you draw from observation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The earliest one that I could probably remember is like Land Before Time dinosaurs. I would have my brother draw them for me because I couldn't, and then I would draw them after him. But or like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or I used to do pop culture stuff too. Like I always thought, oh, if I draw Michael Jackson, people will buy it because people like Michael Jackson because he's a pop icon, right? But I never really sold any of the works that I did that looked like a Abraham Lincoln drawing I did. Like I never sold that.
Do you still have that?
I probably do. My mom has them somewhere. Yeah. But yeah, I used to, draw from photographs. And then it wasn't long before I figured that that's probably what I probably shouldn't be doing that. I remember I did like Audrey Hepburn, Martin Luther King, Abraham Lincoln, Michael Jackson. I even did an Aldous Huxley. But yeah, people want them, but they won't pay for that. I mean, it depends. I mean, it wasn't my market, so. But I would draw from observation. Do you mean like life drawing observation?
Either an object, like a still life, or a photograph of something that you're trying to create.
Yeah, usually photographs, not so much still lifes on my own. I mean, I did at my community college. And I mean, those are good to do because, you learn light referencing and scale. I've always had a problem with that, so. Not that I couldn't do it, it's just I got bored of it. So I wouldn't try too hard. Because there was always somebody better than me. Like, some people just have that eye, like they just can draw what they see and put everybody else to shame. And I know that's how it is in class.
Well, and I think you're demonstrating that everyone has their own style and technique and method, and when you try to draw like someone or in a particular way that isn't natural to you, then you're either not enjoying it or coming up with producing what you are happy with. So
Yeah.
because I think that's a big challenge for a lot of my students, is they have a really specific idea of how they want it to turn out, and rather than embracing their own natural style, whether that's more abstract or, you know, or maybe their strength really isn't in portraiture, it's in landscape, or so it's about discovering your own personal style.
Yeah, definitely. When I went to the university, my professor would let us do whatever we wanted. So he literally just we were all in a studio, and everybody just kind of went their own way. And then it was more like we were learning off each other and everyone's techniques. But it really like expanded your medium, you know. You could tell what people were very not very open to using different techniques or paints or brushes or whatever. But people are just, they need to step out and figure out what works for them. But where I was going with that is my instructor, he didn't really tell me you're doing it wrong. There was no wrong, you know. It was always just paint and then evolve more. And we were graded based on our evolution of painting, which was fun because I never thought I would be painting like 5 by 8 feet paintings, you know, just to try it. What do you find your students struggle with lately?
In terms of drawing,
Or just like maybe interest? I mean, because sometimes students just take a class just to fill out the credit. I mean,
yeah, I would say most of the students that take art classes are not art majors. It's an elective course. And I find that students initially in a drawing class struggle with scale. They want to draw really, really small in hopes that nobody will see their work. So confidence, you know, they want to learn how to draw, but they're kind of afraid to take any risks to get there. Yeah. And then I think the other thing that they struggle with is they expect that in taking a drawing class that they're going to learn some secret as to how to, you know, draw realism or, you know, make something lifelike.
Yeah.
And it's really just practice. It's a matter of trying it and having many failures and then learning from those experiences and just practice. You know, that's the real non-secret, you know.
Yes.
So, but it's, you know, it can be challenging to teach drawing because it's not how people expect to be taught, you know, whether it's, I think students expect that there's a number of techniques that we can just present to them and then they put them all together and they can create a lifelike portrait. But it's difficult to it's not difficult, but you have to try unsuccessfully attempt to, do that technique many, many times before you're able to make that progress. So also patience, just being patient enough to give yourself the time, and then investing in sketching outside of class.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a discipline. It's not, even for those that are really talented, it requires a lot of practice and investment of time.
Yeah, for some reason I could never just fill up a sketchbook. I've always felt like whatever I'm going to do, I'm just going to finish it and make it nice or whatever. But I'm going to have a sketchbook, and I've been holding on to it for about 2 weeks, and it's still in the package. I need to start sketching more, so that way I don't have to break my head when I'm doing a job like this.
Is most of your work larger scale? Do you prefer to draw?
It is, typically my drawings lately have been this,
Yeah.
pretty much like 14 by 24 maybe, something like that. But I'll collage them, so a drawing like this could be like just the top portion of it, and then I'll have other drawings of just like texture, and then I'll input that into the layering of it to like kind of complete the image. I like doing a lot of collage, or like drawing collages.
How long have you been working with this
This
line
style,
quality? Yeah, just repeating strings and.
probably since 2013.
Okay.
I mean, I actually, in 2012, I started working in charcoal, but it wasn't until I moved here. I think because when I used to live in Texas, and so there was no space issues over there, so I had a lot of space to work. Studio space. It was very cheap to have a studio and work in any medium that you wanted. But when I moved here, I kind of got sized down a lot. And before I moved here, I started working in this way, but I wasn't fully concentrating on this style because I was outside painting and doing like large scale stuff. And moving here kind of forced me to really work on this.
It's interesting how your environment shapes your art practice.
Yeah, it
I mean, there's
does.
so many factors.
Yeah, like if I could work in ceramics, I would have a ceramic studio, but that's just not an option, I mean, I can do small projects here and there, but to have a studio space to really work and immerse yourself in the work that you do, like you have to have the space, but I kind of made it work for me, so you do adapt to the environment. And plus, if you want to sell work, not that big painting that you made, it has to be special if they're going to put it in their home, because that's going to take a really big space, and there's not much room to move it, once it's in someone's house. Like, the spaces are a lot more defined here. And so yeah, I just figured I'll try working small scale, see how it works for me, and so far so good. I think the smaller you work, the easier it is to sell your work, because people could just give you the money and they can just walk away with it,
Meaning like a less investment in time in a smaller scale piece, or
Like, you're more, I mean, you're more guaranteed a sale if the collector can walk away with your artwork right then and there, you know? Because how do you know if you're ever going to see them again?
so the factors there are cost, like most likely a smaller scale piece would be more affordable, correct? Or
Yeah, I mean, it
Yeah.
depends. That depends on the artist.
and
Some-
also just room in their home or wherever they're planning to display your work.
Yeah, they usually have a spot in mind. Like, that would go perfect in this area. And they just buy it. But the work has evolved a lot since I moved here.
How do you feel about your role as an artist and what your work is supposed to do? I mean, are you glad that it's displayed as something beautiful or decorative in someone's home? Is it meant to make people consider a particular idea, or is it more just an urge that you...
You know, I do it for me, and then, I mean, I just do what I like. And if somebody likes what I'm doing, that's kind of why I do it. Because it inspires them, and it just kind of adds to the flavor of the culture here. I don't know if that makes, yeah. I was definitely challenged when I moved here, because the bar is set really high here in Seattle, because, you know, you got artists that are known internationally, and there's artists that come from all over the world just to paint, or, you know, paint murals here and stuff. So, like, you really have to bring your A game to a city like this, because the expectations are really high. And it could be very intimidating for an artist like me, like, because I'm not from here. I've been here 4 years, but before I became familiar, I was very intimidated by the artists here. And I knew, you kind of know where you stand when you see other people's work, and you just want to make your work better. Not better than them, but better for yourself, and just kind of evolve as an artist. It's a good challenge.
How did you get in the art scene?
My first break was with Coca Gallery, the Center on Contemporary Art. They, when I moved here, I was really trying to find my way into the scene, and I offered to volunteer for them as a like stand-in for the gallery, or, you know, anything really. And you know, they didn't have anything, and but I guess they liked my work, so they offered me a 24-hour art marathon. So they do it every year, and they bring in all the artists that they like to create 3 finished works to be auctioned the next day. So each artist that participates in that event, they have to create 3 works of art, and they have to stay up for 24 hours doing it.
Wow.
So like, you go in from 10 in the morning and you leave at 10 the next morning.
What was that experience like?
I've done it 4 times.
Wow.
So it's been great, yeah.
Mm.
But that was my first like introduction to the city.
Mhm.
And then from then it just kind of spawned into different areas. You know, you go to an event like that and you meet the artists that are participating, and they're there for a reason, right? Because they're known or they're respected in the community. So it felt good to be part of that. And you know, you just kind of make connections that way. Luckily, you know, they liked my work, so. And they liked this style, which was still evolving at that time. So it was pretty interesting. Kind of forced me to work in this way, in this style.
So is there an audience, or you're just in a room by yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a preview party in the morning, the next morning, and then there's a party at night. So they change it. So sometimes, or before, the artist would go in and work all day, and there was a party at night, and then they still have to work after the party through. And they found that the artists, you know, they needed to not party. Mm-hmm. So they changed it, and so they have a preview party, you know, the next morning, and then, or I forget how it works, but it's open to the public to go. But the auction, you know, you have to buy tickets to attend. But it's a really neat event. A lot of my work has a lot of repetition. And that's kind of what makes the eye just keep moving, you know?
And all of the marks seem to evolve, you know, from a kind of a curved line to a spiral to more petal-like form, and yeah, so it's nice and cohesive, but still variety to keep it interesting.
It's pretty random, but it flows.
Organized randomness.
Yeah, organized chaos.
So has this become a dog bride? Is this a wedding dress and a flower? I noticed the flower.
Yeah. It's like, sometimes I like to think of them as vines, you know? So they are the flower in a way.
Interesting. And the tongue. That's
Yeah.
also thought-provoking.
Yeah. There has to be like a few little things here and there to make a story somehow. People love symbology. I think the more obscure things are, the more interested people are.
Because they want to figure it out.
Yeah. But there's not always a meaning to the work. It's just It's just like a recorded moment, really.
I love how those petals or peacock feathers or those shapes are the direction and the fluidity. This is quite organized at the bottom compared to some of the other stuff
Yeah.
I've seen.
This would probably be just like the first layer. And then I would go over it with maybe some white ink, white acrylic to highlight it.
Are you planning on leaving the tail and the tongue solid?
I'm debating that
Mhm.
right now, but the tongue, yeah, probably. Or maybe. What do you think?
I think it's awesome. What do you think?
It's cool.
Yeah. It's beautiful. So you mentioned the next stage for you if you were to continue
Yeah,
resolving this.
I'd probably take out all the, stuff that doesn't really need to be there anymore. Like the first markings that I started with, those usually disappear. It just defines the whole thing. Normally on the charcoal works that I do, they're done on bristle board, so I'll X-Acto blade them. So I'll cut them out and then I'll raise them, and they'll be up like about 1/4 of an inch. And then I'll do like a shadow box frame. So then it kind of becomes its own platform in a way. But for this one, I kind of like the scratches and stuff, because you see where it started, I guess. And plus, my eraser's too big.
It's pretty awesome.
I don't know if I have a small one.
And I don't know if it's necessary for you to even worry beyond, you know, just demonstrating the drawing is
Okay.
exactly what we were
Yeah.
wanting. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. If you guys are happy, I'm happy. Because I can go on forever.
No, I think for demonstration purposes, it's perfect because it doesn't give students too much that they feel discouraged. Like
Yeah.
if you start adding paint or this
Yeah.
or that. So if they're kind of following along with your style of just kind of loosely
Yeah, just to kind of get it
Mhm.
going.
So I think that's ideal. Like, this has been great.